Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Ali Imran. Today I'm going to discuss an important topic which is related to the current situation of the Middle East, and this topic basically has been assigned by Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali Fani, and I would like to share some details related to this topic with you. So hopefully it would add some information in your knowledge. So let's start. I'm going to discuss today that is the role of the United States in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Basically, to elaborate this topic, I would like to share all details, which includes historical involvement, policy decisions, and the impact on peace negotiations. With all these details, I would also like to share a very important and a very good documentary which have been covered by the Al Jazeera television. I would like to share different clips with you time by time during the presentation. So let's start.
Let's talk about the U.S.'s relationship with Israel.
We stand with Israel.
I love Israel. I love Israel.
The bond between our two countries is unbreakable.
The eternal friendship.
Relationship is very important.
We are you and you are us.
It's a relationship that's always been super close, but it's been getting more attention recently. After Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, and Israel launched its war on Gaza.
The U.S. is moving a tremendous amount of firepower and manpower as a show of support to Israel.
A significant increase in American support.
Basically comparable to a blank check.
No questions asked, not even a debate.
Now there are...
Hopefully this documentary would be a good addition in your knowledge. So now let's move to the actual topic. So first of all, I would like to share some introductory details related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Basically, this conflict has been a major flashpoint in the Middle East. And the United States has played a central, complex, and often controversial role in its development and attempts at resolution. And maybe you would have got this idea from the documentary as well. Similarly, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a persistent and intricate geopolitical challenge rooted in historical, religious, and territorial factors. Basically, all of these factors are the basis of this conflict, and there are multiple actors which contribute to the protracted struggle. But United States is considered one of the main actor which has a pivotal role in the dynamics of this conflict. Similarly, the United States involvement has transformed over time, shaped by diplomatic initiatives, geopolitical considerations, and a network of alliances.
Now there are lots of layers to the U.S.-Israel relationship, and it's tied up in at least 75 years of pretty complicated history. But here are 4 things to know that'll help explain what's behind it, what's kept it going, and where it's at now. The first thing to know is that the U.S. has supported Israel from the very beginning. Israel declared itself a state in 1948 on land that had previously been Palestine under British control. More than 700,000 Palestinians fled or were forced from their homes. And the U.S. was the first country to recognize Israel. President Truman did it just 11 minutes after its creation. The idea of establishing a nation for Jewish people had been gaining momentum for decades. It was the main goal of a movement called Zionism, which started in the late 1800s. Zionists believed that a Jewish homeland was the only way to ensure safety for Jews, who'd suffered persecution around the world for centuries.
The United States supported the Zionist idea from the very beginning. It was almost natural that the United States would be the first to recognize the existence of the State of Israel.
There was great sympathy for the Zionist project throughout the 1930s and 40s, for example. And of course, after the Holocaust, that was combined with enormous sympathy for the genocide that was carried out against the Jewish people in Europe. And that helped pave the way for Western and particularly American support for the establishment of a Jewish state.
The other thing was that President Harry Truman was facing an election. And he didn't want to sacrifice any possible edge that he could have over his opponent.
Basically, that was the introduction which I shared with you, and now I would like to share some details related to the historical context. Basically, this historical context is with reference to the US involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Historical roots, late 19th to early 20th century. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict traces back to the nationalist movements amid the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Basically, this conflict was raised after the decline of the Ottoman Empire. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 expressed British support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Later on, UN Partition Plan 1947 and Arab-Israeli War 1948. The UN proposed a partition plan leading to the establishment of Israel in 1948. Arab rejection resulted in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, causing displacement of Palestinian Arabs. Later on, there is the early US engagement. Basically, USA was involved in the early 1948. President Truman's swift recognition of Israeli solidified the US-Israel alliance, marked by consistent military, economic, and diplomatic support. Later on, there is also an important aspect of the historical context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that is the Six-Day War in the 1967 and UN Resolution 242. Israel's occupation led to UN Resolution 242 calling for withdrawal from occupied territories. Implementation of this resolution became central to US involvement in peace negotiations. Basically, in this resolution, US was an important, the negotiator. So later on, in 1973, there is a Yom Kippur and Camp David Accords 1978. US diplomacy played a role in brokering ceasefires. The Camp David Accords led to the Israel-Egypt peace treaty, but a comprehensive Israeli-Palestinian resolution remained elusive. And after that, in 1990, there is Oslo Accords. US brokered accords aimed at a two-state resolution. Basically, in this accord, US proposed a two-state solution. Despite optimism, progress stalled, notably after the assassination of the Prime Minister Rabin in 1995. Basically, there were some efforts which were done by the United States, but due to the assassination of the Prime Minister Rabin in 1995, this progress was also stalled. Later on, there were some challenges in subsequent administrations, like in 2000s. The Camp David Summit 2000 ended without agreement. The Roadmap for Peace 2003 faced challenges amid ongoing violence and distrust. Later on, in 2020, Trump administration's deal of the century. The Trump administration proposed a peace plan met with skepticism from Palestinians and parts of the international community. Basically, the Trump, which proposed a peace plan, was not acceptable for the Palestinians, but also some part of the international community as well. So there is an other milestone of this history, that is the evolution of US involvement. Throughout administrations, US presidents grappled with complexities shaping policy decisions in the region. Basically, here I just want to let you know that all the US presidents basically had complexities to resolve the issue of the Israeli-Palestine. Then the setting the stage for the analysis. Understanding this historical context is crucial for delving into the role of the United States in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. including the evolution of US involvement and its impact on peace negotiations in this enduring and complex geopolitical landscape. Basically, this was the historical context related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So now I would like to share some analysis related to these conflicts.
Now, something both the US and Israel highlight a lot is the idea of shared values. It can be hard to pin down exactly what those values are, but many US politicians talk about Israel as
the only democracy in the Middle East.
A lot of people might criticize this idea that both the US and Israel are beacons of democracy. But whatever you think about that, it's a narrative they both like to emphasize.
America is a nation of immigrants, strengthened by diversity, enriched by faith. We're fueled by entrepreneurship and innovation, and we are defined by a democratic discourse. So in Israel, we see values that we share.
They seem to feel they have an alignment of values that perhaps the United States doesn't feel it has with Muslim nations in the Middle East. And they feel that Israel's strategic desires and America's strategic desires dovetail significantly. And I think that's something that draws them together.
The United States has played a significant and complex role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict throughout its history. The involvement of the US in this protracted and deeply rooted conflict has been multifaceted, encompassing diplomatic, economic, and military dimensions. But these diplomatic, economic, and military dimensions were more towards to the Israel. To understand the evolving nature of the US role, it is crucial to examine the historical context, policy decisions, and the impact on peace negotiations. So basically, these are the few details related to these analysis. First of all, I would like to share details related to the historical involvement. Although I shared some details related to the historical context with you, but there are some other important details in which US involvement was more. Post-World War II and the establishment of the Israel 1947 to 1948, the US played a pivotal role in the recognition and establishment of the State of the Israel in 1948. President Harry S. Truman was instrumental in garnering support for the United Nations partition plan, which led to the creation of Israel. Basically, that was the America which forced the United Nations for this partition plan, which was proposed in 1948. Basically, this plan was acceptable for the Israel, but not for the Palestinians. Cold War dynamics 1950 to 1980s. During the Cold War, the US viewed Israel as a strategic ally in the Middle East, countering Soviet influence in the region. Military aid and diplomatic support strengthened the US-Israel relationships. Peace process initiatives in 1970 to 1990. US involvement increased in attempts to broker peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The Camp David Accords 1978 between Israel and Egypt, facilitated by President Jimmy Carter, marked a notable success. So after that, there were some policy decisions. Those were Those are considered very important in the conflict of Israeli-Palestinian. They are the strategic alliances. The US consistently supported Israel as a strategic ally, providing substantial military and economic aid. This support influenced Israel's military capabilities and regional dominance. And the other one is the peace process engagement. US presidents actively engaged in peace processes, the Oslo Accord 1993, and the subsequent negotiations were facilitated by US administrations, demonstrating their commitment to achieving a lasting resolution. Jerusalem and the embassy move 2017. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the Israel and move the US embassy from Tel Aviv was a controversial move that sparked tensions in this region. The decision was applauded by Israel but condemned by Palestinians and much of the international community. And after that, there is impact on the peace negotiations, which cover different aspects. So I would like to share these aspects with you one by one. First one is the positive contributions. U.S. involvement has led to significant breakthroughs such as the Camp David Accords and the Israeli-Jordan Peace Treaty 1994. These efforts demonstrated the potential for U.S. leadership in achieving regional stability. Challenges and criticism. The perception of the US bias towards Israel has been a persistent challenge. Critics argue that this bias hampers the US ability to act as an impartial mediator, undermining trust among Palestinian leaders. Recent developments and the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords 2020 marked a shift in the dynamics of the region, with the normalization of the relations between Israel and several Arab states. The US played a key role in brokering these agreements, focusing on regional stability and countering common threats. After that, there's some recent trends and future prospects which I would like to share with you. Biden administration. The Biden administration has expressed a commitment to a two-state solution and a return to a dialogue. The US has resumed humanitarian aid to Palestinians and seeks to address underlying issues such as settlements expansion. Regional dynamics. Evolving regional dynamics, including the influence of Iran and changing alliances, will likely shape the US approach, balancing the relationships with traditional allies and addressing the concerns of the Palestinian leadership will be crucial for success. And the third one is the humanitarian and economic aid. The US has the potential to leverage its economic and humanitarian aid to encourage positive developments. Investing in economic developments and infrastructure projects could contribute to long-term stability in the Palestine. Now there are different stakeholders which are involved in this conflict. So I would like to share some details about these stakeholders. First,
another element in U.S. political support for Israel is the influence of pro-Israel lobby groups like AIPAC. Now, there are different schools of thought on just how much influence lobby groups like AIPAC actually have in practice. Are they really shaping policy, or are they just promoting policies already popular with politicians and the public? Whatever the case, U.S. leaders certainly pay attention.
Well, hello, AIPAC.
What a remarkable crowd.
It is wonderful to be here and see so many friends.
AIPAC has long been able to direct funds to candidates for office on the basis of that candidate's attitudes towards Israel, especially in the House of Representatives, where they're running for office every 5 minutes. They need a constant flow of money.
What the Jewish Israel lobby do is not forcing policy on the United States, as many academics and pundits are arguing. They present a policy that they argue would be preferable to Israel. If these interests are aligned with the American interests, then the United States would go for it.
First one is the Israel. Basically, there are main two stakeholders of Israel. That's the government and military and the political parties. And after that, there is the Palestinian Authority. In the Palestinian Authority, there is a president and government and the Fatah Party. And there is another third stakeholder, and that is also considered a very important stakeholder, that is the Hamas. The Hamas leadership and the governing Gaza. And the fourth one and important stakeholder is the United States. Diplomatic mediation and policy decisions, basically, which are issued by the United States, and they obviously affect this conflict between Israel and Palestine. And the fifth one is the United Nations. In the United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council and the UN agencies. And then there are the Arab states, regional dynamics and financial support. Basically, these are also the stakeholders in this conflict. And other than that, there is international community. In the international community, main importantly, there is the European Union, non-governmental organizations. So basically, these were the main stakeholders which I shared with you, and which have very important stakes in this conflict.
So here's the next point to know. As well as those shared values, the US and Israel are strategic partners. What does that mean? Well, basically that they both get something concrete out of the relationship that serves their national interest. And it really started with the Cold War.
Significant news from Russia.
That's the period after the Second World War until the late 1980s, when the US and the Communist Soviet Union were competing to be the dominant global power. And that rivalry played out in the Middle East too, especially in Egypt, Israel's neighbor. Keep in mind that 5 Arab countries, including Egypt, went to war with Israel right after it was created.
Colonel Nasser holds a parade.
In 1955, Egypt's leader Gamal Abdel Nasser bought weapons from the Soviet Union.
We have to defend our country against aggression.
That shifted the military balance in the region against Israel and marked a new division in the Middle East.
With that, Nasser separated himself from the West, and the Middle East was divided into 2 camps, pro-Soviet and pro-Western.
Now here's the thing. Israel had been asking the US for weapons since 1950. It said it needed them to maintain a military edge over hostile Arab neighbors. And in 1962, the US, under President Kennedy, finally agreed.
Kennedy laid the foundation for what would later become a closer relationship, and one that had a strategic dimension.
That increased exponentially after the 1967 war, when Israel not only fended off Arab states in 6 days, but also managed to conquer land from Jordan, Syria, and Egypt.
And with time, Israel started to offer more and more strategic gains and advantages to the United States.
They've got intelligence gathering abilities that are pretty efficient, and they're also funneling a lot of this information back to the United States.
Now, I would like to share some details related to the geopolitical implications. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has far-reaching geopolitical implications, influencing regional stability, alliances, and global diplomatic dynamics. Understanding these implications requires examining the complex interactions between key players, regional powers, and international actors. So now I would like to share some details related to the geopolitical implications about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So these are the important geopolitical implications, which are regional stability and security, influence of regional powers, impact on Arab-Israeli relations, US influence and diplomacy, international diplomacy and multilateral forums, humanitarian and refugee issues, terrorism and extremism. Basically, these are the important geopolitical implications. So now I would like to share the details of these implications with you. Regional stability and security. The conflict has direct implications for the stability and security of the entire Middle East region. Escalations in violence or the breakdown of peace process can have a ripple effect, contributing to wider regional instability and affecting neighboring countries as well. Influence of regional powers. The conflict is often used by regional powers to assert influence and pursue geopolitical goals. Iran, for example, supports anti-Israeli groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, using them as proxies to challenge Israel and extend its influence in the region. The third one is the impact on Arab-Israeli relations. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict historically strained relationships with Israel and many Arab states. Developments such as the Abraham Accords signal a shift in these dynamics, with some Arab states opting for normalization with Israel. This has implications for broader Arab-Israeli relations and the potential for regional cooperation. There is a fourth one, that is the US influence and diplomacy. The US plays a pivotal role in the conflict, providing diplomatic, economic, and military support to Israel. The stance of each US administration affects the trajectory of peace negotiations and the balance of power in the region. Shifts in US policy can have profound geopolitical implications. And there are a few of others, that is related to the international diplomacy and multilateral forums. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a recurring theme in international diplomatic forums, such as the United Nations resolutions, statements, and diplomatic initiatives related to the conflict can influence global perceptions and diplomatic relations. Humanitarian and refugee issues. The protracted nature of the conflict has led to significant humanitarian challenges, including the displacement of Palestinian refugees. The management of refugee populations and the provision of humanitarian aid have geopolitical implications, as they are linked to the regional stability and perceptions of justice. Terrorism and extremism. Basically, this is also an important factor. The conflict has been exploited by extremist groups to recruit and mobilize support. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah leverage anti-Israel sentiments to further their own agendas, contributing to a broader regional challenge of terrorism and extremism. Basically, these were the geopolitical implications which I shared with you.
So what does Israel get out of its relationship with the US? Well, among other things, a lot of money. Since the Second World War, the United States has given more money to Israel than any other country, about $260 billion in total. That included economic aid until 2008, but now the U.S. only gives money for military spending. Israel gets $3.8 billion a year as part of a deal signed by President Obama. These American taxpayer dollars have helped Israel build up one of the most powerful militaries in the world. With the latest American fighter jets and an advanced missile defense system called Iron Dome. But one important thing to know about the money given to Israel is that almost all of it has to be spent in the U.S.
America provides essentially grants for Israel to buy American military hardware.
So it's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone, really. I mean, you give all this money, but it's actually spent on industries that are in key congressional districts.
Another thing about this military aid is that the U.S. really doesn't attach any conditions to it, either in terms of how the weapons are used or as a way to pressure Israel on any of its policies, like the way it treats Palestinians, for example.
Israel essentially is given a blank check with regard to the military hardware, the technology, the resources that the United States provides. There is little or no scrutiny. Theoretically, there are laws in place, for example, the Leahy laws, that U.S. military hardware can only be used for defensive purposes and can't be used in violation of human rights standards. We've never seen those conditions or those provisions applied in the Israeli case.
So how do we explain this blank check approach? Well, some of it comes down to domestic U.S. politics, where generally being pro-Israel pays off politically. And one way to look at that is by looking at public opinion on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Sympathy for Israelis has consistently polled higher than sympathy for Palestinians, although the gap's been narrowing a bit recently. Something else to consider is that a big voting constituency in the US are evangelical or born-again Christians. They make up about a quarter of the US population, and they are overwhelmingly pro-Israel.
Israel is not a political issue, it's a Bible issue. Israel is the only nation on earth created by a sovereign act of God.
Jewish people are God's chosen people. The Bible says 55 times that land shall be Israel's land forever.
We are talking about millions of people who believe that what is written in the Bible is a pure truth. So if God promised to Abraham that the land of Israel would be his and of his descendants, then this is what should happen.
Share some recommendations, basically those recommendations which may help out that we may resolve this Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a deeply rooted and complex issue with historical, political, and cultural dimensions. Achieving a lasting resolution requires careful consideration of the concerns and aspirations of both parties. While there is no one full-size fits-all solution, various proposals and policy recommendations have been discussed over the years. So there are some proposals and I would also like to share the rationale of those proposals with you. First of all, I would like to talk about the two-state solution. The proposal is the establishment of two separate independent states for Israelis and Palestinians based on pre-1967 borders with mutually agreed upon land swap. What would be the rationale for that? A two-state solution aims to address the national aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians, allowing each to govern themselves in their own sovereign territory. The second one is the land for peace. The proposal is Israel withdraws from occupied territories in exchange for recognition and peace agreements from neighboring Arab states. The rationale will be this approach, rooted in UN Security Council Resolution 242, seeks to address the territorial issues at the heart of the conflict and promote regional stability through negotiated agreements. The third one is the confederation or the federation. Proposal is establishing a confederation or federation where Israeli and Palestinian state maintain independent governance but share certain responsibilities such as security and economic cooperation. This model aims to address concerns about security and sovereignty while fostering cooperation on issues of common interest. Now there is an important recommendation related to the Jerusalem as a shared capital. Proposal is recognizing Jerusalem as the shared capital of Israel and Palestinian state with arrangements to ensure access to religious sites for all. The status of Jerusalem is a sensitive and central issue. A shared capital approach seeks to address the historical and religious significance of the city for both Israelis and Palestinians. And there is other recommendation that is related to the international mediation and guarantees. The proposal is international entities, possibly with the involvement of the United Nations, mediate negotiations and provide guarantees to ensure the implementation and enforcement of agreements. Rationale will be international mediation can address concerns about bias and lack of trust between the parties, providing a neutral platform for negotiations and assurance of compliance. Then recommendation is related to the economic development and regional integrations. The proposal is promoting economic development in the Palestinian territories and fostering regional economic integrations to create shared interests and stability. Economic cooperation can contribute to building trust between communities, reduce poverty, and create incentives for peaceful coexistence. Track 2 diplomacy and people-to-people initiatives is another recommendation, and the proposal is supporting grassroots initiatives and informal dialogues between Israelis and Palestinians to build trust and understanding. And how that could be possible? That will be possible if people-to-people initiatives can create opportunities for communication, empathy, and collaboration at the grassroots level, fostering a foundation for peace. There is another important recommendation that is related to the addressing core issues. Comprehensive negotiations addressing core issues such as refugees, borders, security, and the status of the Jerusalem. A comprehensive approach ensures that all key issues are on the table, allowing for a holistic resolution that addresses the core concerns of both parties. Then there is an important recommendation that is related to the human rights and international law. In this regard, the policy recommendation is upholding and promoting international human rights standards and legal frameworks to ensure the rights and dignity of all individuals, regardless of their nationality or ethnicity. The rationale is adherence to international law and human rights principles can provide a foundation for an equitable solution, fostering a sense of justice and fairness. And there is another important recommendation which is related to the regional diplomacy and multilateral engagement. Policy recommendation is encouraging regional diplomatic efforts involving neighboring states to address the broader geopolitical context and promote regional stability. Our regional approach recognizes the interconnectedness of the Middle East and the potential for collaborative solutions that go beyond bilateral negotiations. So basically, those were the recommendations which I shared with you. Now, basically, this is the almost the end of my presentation, but before that I would like to conclude.
So you've got all of these elements that feed into the US's relationship with Israel. There's the history, those shared values, strategic interests, religion, and broad public and political support. All of this has sustained the relationship to the point where some people say it goes pretty much unchallenged. And that's where a lot of the criticism also comes in, especially in the context of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory and a system that human rights groups have described as apartheid. One view of the US-Israel relationship is that it basically enables this to the detriment of both Palestinians and Israelis.
Because crucial to this relationship is that America is the guarantor of Israeli impunity. We could not be where we are today if America had not got us to a place where there are no costs and consequences internationally, legally, in terms of sanctions at the UN, etc., for the way Israel treats the Palestinians day in, day out for generations. And I wonder how much America is waking up to that.
So is the alliance under pressure? Well, it's hard to say. But events following the Hamas attack on October 7th have put it on full display.
Let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back.
Plenty of people are questioning it, perhaps more than before.
Biden, you can't hide! Biden, you can't hide!
The United States of America provides $3.8 billion every year to Israel. We have a right to say, sorry, you need a new military strategy.
But whether that will translate into any tangible change is something else.
Congress is still overwhelmingly in line with the traditional pro-Israel stance that is largely uncritical and in many cases hostile toward Palestinians.
A lot will depend on how the Gaza war plays out, what Israel does next, and how the US government responds.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a deeply entrenched and multifaceted geopolitical challenge with historical, religious, and territorial roots. The United States has played a significant role in shaping the conflict's dynamics, evolving its involvement over time through diplomatic initiatives, alliances, and policy decisions. Analyzing key historical moments such as the establishment of the Israel in 1948 and subsequent conflicts highlights the complexities of US engagement. The impact of American policies on the conflict, including strategic alliances with Israel and active participation in peace process, has had both positive contributions such as the Camp David Accords and the challenges, including perceived bias. Recent developments such as the Abraham Accords underscore the ever-changing geopolitical landscape. Stakeholders in this conflict, including Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, the United States, the United Nations, Arab states and the international community each play distinct roles with diverse interests. The conflict geopolitical implications extend beyond the region, influencing global alliances, diplomacy, and security considerations. And after that, the recommendations for resolution encompass various proposals such as two-state solution, land for peace agreements, confederation or federation models, shared capital agreements for Jerusalem, and international mediation. Additionally, addressing core issues promoting economic development, supporting people-to-people initiatives, upholding human rights and international law, and encouraging regional diplomacy are crucial components of potential solutions. The geopolitical ramifications of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are profound, impacting regional stability, alliances, and the global diplomatic dynamics. As the conflict continues to evolve, the future trajectory will be shaped by the policies of key actors, including the Biden administration and the broader geopolitical landscape in the Middle East. Basically, that was the topic which is not only related to the current scenario of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but also I think it would be a good addition in your knowledge. So thank you so much.